To the Tuesday, September 8th, 2020.
This meeting is being recorded.
City Council. Will the city clerk please call the roll?
Certainly. Honorable Mayor Pandeleon.
Here.
Alderman Morris.
Here.
Alderman Karas.
Here.
Alderman Rummel. Alderman Notes is absent. Alderman Preschlack.
Here.
Alderman
Present.
Gashgarian. Thank you, Melanie.
Here.
Alderman Gashgarian. Alderman Bushman.
Here.
Alderman Weber.
Here.
Mr. Mayor, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Biddy. Would you all please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. In accordance with state statute, I have made a determination that it was not practical or prudent to schedule an in-person city council meeting because of the COVID-19 pandemic. That is why this September 8th, 2020 city council meeting will be held remotely. The first item on the agenda is reports of city officers, comments by mayor. I guess one general comment, after this last evening, welcome to fall. We had summer until yesterday, and then God threw the switch on the evening of Labor Day like he often does, and here we are. So now we're into the days getting shorter and school back in session, and hopefully we'll have a few good beach days left. This fall, with respect to the COVID-19, with respect for the COVID-19 restrictions, Lake Forest Open Lands is not going to be able to host its traditional bagpipes and bonfire picnic at Middle Fork Farm as they have for the past 30 plus years. Instead, and I think we have a slide. Instead, on Saturday evening, September 19th at 6:30 p.m., Lake Forest Open Lands will bring the bagpipes and bonfire spirit to our neighborhoods by having pipers play Amazing Grace simultaneously at various locations throughout Lake Forest, creating a magical, mystical moment to bring our community together in a time when we need this camaraderie. We're grateful for Open Lands for this gift to our community in this non-traditional year, and we're proud to support this special event. We will host pipers at parks and schools, including Market Square, where I will hold the Lake Forest Open Lands flag as the piper plays that evening, and there are rumors I might even wear a kilt. I encourage you and your families to consider joining in at the location nearest you at 6:30 p.m. to hear this beautiful tribute. You can visit Lake Forest Open Lands website at www.lfola.org to find the exact locations. There are also signs in our parks and at our schools indicating the exact locations. Anyone interested in participating is asked to wear a mask and observe proper physical distancing guidelines. This is a great creative effort to maintain important city traditions, and I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a wonderful tribute. So please plan to attend if you can. Continuing in the climate of adapting to COVID, city staff have not skipped a beat when it comes to recognizing retirements and promotions. So we have a brief video for Lake Forest Fire Department retirements, promotions, and resolutions from Kevin Cronin, the Deputy Fire Chief. And we have a little video here. Having some technical difficulties.
Members of the Lake Forest.
There we go.
Thank you for letting us share this brief presentation tonight to honor some of the members of the Lake Forest Fire Department. with COVID restrictions going on, we haven't been able to get in front of the council as we normally would and honor some of our members that are retiring and being promoted. So we've tried to think this a little outside of the box and put together this presentation to honor two of our retiring lieutenants, whose resolution is in the meeting minutes tonight, both of whom started in 1991 and gave numerous contributions to the fire department, including serving on special teams and various positions within the fire department. Lieutenant Steve Gross and Lieutenant Paul Puglisi both have retired, and we also have some brief videos tonight from their two replacements, Lieutenant Eric Kazitsky and Lieutenant Chris Roberts. Thanks again for letting us share a little time at this meeting tonight.
Hi, I'm Steve Gross, retired 29 years and a little over a month. Enjoyed working for the city, grew up here, longtime family ties with City of Lake Forest and Lake Bluff. I have enjoyed working here. The best thing is the people of the city, especially the workers, have enjoyed it. They're a great bunch of workers, do a lot of hard work, and have done many things throughout my career in the city, and also did some part-time stuff for the city. Thank you very much, and have a good night.
Well, it's hard to believe that 29 years, 1 week, and 5 days have come and gone. But who's counting? Very grateful for the experiences I've had here. Ran into and been able to work with a lot of fantastic people. And working here is a memory that I will cherish to my last days.
Honorable Aldermen, members of the City Council, City Executive Staff, and the Office of City Manager, I take this opportunity to thank you for the opportunity to serve the City of Lake Forest in the capacity of Lieutenant. 17 years ago, I started my career here with the City of Lake Forest, and I'm a proud member of this organization. I'd like to thank you for the continued support of the administration under Chief Pete Siebert and giving us opportunities, things like this brand new fire engine, which we're very appreciative of. We understand that these tough economic times will call for hard decisions, and again, we can't thank you enough for all your hard work and efforts in the support of the City Fire Department under Chief Siebert's direction. I'd like to thank all the members. I'm a very proud member of this organization and the members that work here. This is the best fire department in Lake County, and I'm very proud and educated, honorable, and dedicated staff that serve the beautiful City of Lake Forest. So thanks again. Hope everybody stays safe and healthy. Have a great night.
Mr. Mayor and the members of the City Council, my name is Chris Roberts, and I'm proud to have been serving the Lake Forest Fire Department for nearly 10 years. I would like to express my gratitude for everything that the members of this organization have done to help prepare me for my new role in which I have most recently accepted. The level of skill and professionalism in this organization, along with the support of the mayor, city council, and city manager, are what make this city truly a great place to be a part of. Thank you for your time.
Well, thank you, Chief Siebert, and congratulations to our retiring officers. Congratulations to our newly promoted officers. It looks like at least one of them could teach me a few things about working on roofs. You know, we will miss. We certainly appreciate the dedication of 29 years of service to the city, and it sounds like we've got some very well experienced people to fill their shoes. I hope the retiring officers have a wonderful retirement, and our newly promoted officers can you know, ably fill those shoes and continue the proud tradition of the Lake Forest Fire Department. So thank you very much. I love those videos. It's the next best thing to having it in the city council chambers, but I do miss those. Those are really special events, and we'd love to get back to those as soon as possible. So congratulations to all our newly retiring and promoted officers in the fire department, and I'm sure you'll continue the great legacy that you've all built together. The next item on Mayor's comments is COVID-19 financial impact update from Elizabeth Holleb, Finance Director. So we have some slides for this. Elizabeth, would you like to take it away? It's remarkably good news given the circumstances. Let's just leave it. Let's just start it that way.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. Hopefully you can see the slides and hear me.
Yes, we can.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Mayor Pantaleona, it is good news despite the circumstances, and it's a pleasure to be able to give you good news this evening. I'm going to pass over these introductory slides. We've had those for a couple different updates, and just get to new information or changed information from the last time we did this update. First, municipal sales tax. This is the 1% municipal sales tax that comes in as revenue in the general fund. We have 2 months of information to share with you this evening. The first slide are receipts from August, and those were related to May sales. And this is the first month included in the city's FY21 budget. As you know, we have the 90-day lag, so the last couple months you've seen were actually booked back to FY20. So the chart in the middle simply shows the first column was the receipts for May 2019 sales. The second column is what we had originally budgeted for FY21. The third column is what we revised for the FY21 revised budget that you adopted on May 4th to reflect anticipated reductions in sales tax revenue as a result of COVID-19. We budgeted for May municipal sales tax about 50% of last year, but you can see we came in better than that. The May 2020 receipts in August totaled $119,590. So about $30,000 above budget for the month. The next slide is the same information, but for June sales. So these are receipts we'll get in September. The Illinois Department of Revenue published these numbers on Friday, so we were able to add it to this presentation this evening. Again, with the same columns, you can see that for June in our revised FY21 budget, we were still budgeting approximately 50% of last year. And you can see that the actual receipts of $152,458 significantly in excess of our revised budget and quite nearly the same level as June 2019. These reports on Friday afternoon sent a lot of us finance directors scrambling and scratching our heads. So there's been quite a lot of email communication amongst ourselves, especially the Lake County finance directors, to see if everyone was seeing a similar result. And whereas people's actual receipts may have varied a little bit, everyone is seeing receipts come in September for June sales well above what they budgeted, given what we anticipated with COVID-19. To perhaps solve some of that, I'm just going to go ahead to this slide and go back to income tax. But The Commission on Government Forecasting and Accountability publishes a monthly briefing in which they compare the Illinois state budget, which runs on a July 1 to June 30 fiscal year, to actual receipts. And so I just snapshotted a couple items from the August 2020 briefing. The slide on the left showing that both income taxes and sales taxes for the state as a state combined are well ahead what we would have projected given COVID-19. And it talks a little bit about that in the narrative to the right. So whether or not this will continue remains to be seen, but certainly for June and May, sales did come in significantly higher than most people forecasted. Turning over to income tax revenue, this provides income tax year-to-date as of August 31st. We talked about this in the July briefing, in that because the state of Illinois taxes unemployment benefits and the COVID-19 stimulus at the federal level provided enhanced unemployment benefits for those unable to work due to COVID-19, we're seeing those income tax receipts come in significantly higher as well than what we budgeted. So the chart here just shows year-to-date totals, comparing the FY19 actual, FY20 actual, original budget, revised and adopted budget by the City Council, compared to the FY21 actual year-to-date as of August 31st. As you know, those unemployment benefits do cease July 31st, and absent any additional stimulus approved by the federal government, we would anticipate seeing those drop off based on continued unemployment in some sectors for COVID-19 closures. You can see here as well in the Commission on Government Forecasting and Accountability briefing, where personal income tax and corporate income tax has come in year to date for the first 2 months of the state's fiscal year. Some of this, it's noted, is due to the delay in income tax reporting. That 4/15 date for 2019 was extended to July 15th, so that is probably a factor as well here. But the unemployment incentives do contribute significantly. So overall in the general fund, looking very good at this point. Looking then to the Park and Recreation Fund, as you know, we're mostly concerned with recreation activities because they're funded in large part by fees, and that has been significantly impacted this year due to COVID-19. This summary table just shows year-to-date financials as of August 31st. We separate the Park and Recreation Fund into 2 categories, the first being parks, maintenance, and forestry, which is largely funded from the property tax levy. You can see that those year-to-date actuals for parks and forestry is nearly identical to the prior year-to-date actuals, as we would expect, because we don't anticipate the tax revenue being impacted by COVID-19. We've also seen, as of August 31st, the full first installment payments. As you know, people could spread their first installment property tax payment over 2 dates. So we had a bit of a timing issue and deferral of collections, but as of August 31st, we're trending exactly where we thought we would. And then the middle category is showing the recreation programs, showing the prior year-to-date actuals compared to the year-to-date actuals for this year. Just noting the budget columns there are full calendar year, not year-to-date. So if those look odd in those buckets, that's why. But you can see year-to-date actual revenue and recreation programs at about $650,000, about half of what it was last year-to-date. So well off based on the limitations Parks and Recreation had for summer programming. And then expenses reflecting some savings for part-time staff that is typically brought in during the summer to run those programs. We've seen some salary and benefit savings, but we do have some full-time employees who continue to be paid salaries and benefits. So you don't see dollar for dollar savings in expenses as you do in revenues. But you can see where we're trending. Year-to-date actual is a net loss of $825 compared to last year, a net loss of $464 as of the year-to-date. but trending fairly positively compared to the budget, which budget for the year of FY21, we've budgeted a net loss of 2.9 million. And then the summary at the right-hand side just adds the two together so that you can see the total as a fund. Turning then to the Deer Path Golf Course Fund. The Golf Course Fund financials are going to be presented on a 1-month lag. So here you're looking only at year-to-date as of July 31st. So essentially the first quarter of the fiscal year. And you can see that quite remarkably, the golf course at both revenue and expense is trending better than the prior year-to-date, which is astounding if you consider the fact that they did have closures and significant limitations on operations when they did reopen for the summer. So that again is very positive news. Revenue almost identical to the same time period last year with some expense savings. So the net being actually higher than the net as of July 31st of 19. Capital Improvement Fund, we're tracking revenues here to show what, sorry, I couldn't see the whole chart. So revenues to see how the revenues are coming in based on what we budgeted. The primary revenues that we're tracking are shown here. As far as property tax, we're on budget. We did have a smaller Capital Improvement Fund levy this year than last year. But as I mentioned with the deferral, we've seen the first installment paid and remitted to us in full. So we're trending on pace for property tax revenue. Home rule sales tax is somewhat distorted year to date because last year we did not have the home rule sales tax in the Capital Improvement Fund until it was effective July 1st. That was the second 0.5% sales tax that was implemented in July of 19. But we're trending slightly under last year in the home rule sales tax and are seeing, the positive results that we're seeing with the municipal sales tax as well, being ahead of the budget year to date. Real estate transfer tax is, I think we've used the phrase on fire several times in the last few weeks. Real estate market in Lake Forest is going gangbusters. We set a record in July and with 65 transfers residential in July. That was a record since the real estate transfer tax was initially implemented. And we blew that away with 80 residential transfers in August. So real estate transfer tax revenue has already exceeded the year's budget with just over $1 million and budgeted at $900,000 for the year. We also did have a one-time payment of $215,000 earlier in the year related to the sale of the Kelmscott Park apartments. So very good news there. You can see where we stand with grants and contributions compared to budget, other revenue and general fund transfers. So looking good for revenues in the Capital Improvement Fund as well. Turning away from fund summaries and just kind of providing the update on the local business grant program. This is still not really the results we had anticipated. We still have received only 16 applications. You can see we have committed and granted about $26,000 compared to the $287,000 that was allocated to this program. We pay those out, as you know, based on sales trend in 20. So with each month completed, they can submit for the grant payment request for that particular month. And so we've worked with the chamber on trying to get additional notices out to these businesses. And at this point, we've talked about doing a targeted mailing to perhaps the 80 to 100 businesses that would benefit most significantly from this program to ensure that they're aware of the program and how to apply for it. And then we've tracked for you, our activity related to COVID-19 specific costs and recovery of those. The only update from the last presentation we provided relates to the CARES Act Coronavirus Relief Fund. As you know, Lake County received $121.5 million. They have to date allocated $20 million of that to local municipalities. The allocation to the city of Lake Forest is $631,260. We did make our initial submittal to Lake County for those drawdowns on July 31st. And we have until October 15th to complete our submittals to Lake County related to the Coronavirus Relief Fund. I would just also note that included on your omnibus agenda this evening is a recommendation to enter into an intergovernmental agreement with the Lake Forest Library. When Lake County did allocate some of the funding to local governmental entities, they provided some allocations to libraries in Lake County, but only those that were separate library districts. So the only way a municipal library can tap the coronavirus relief funds is through the municipality in which they're located. So Lake Forest Library would not be able to make any requests from the Lake County Coronavirus Relief Fund. We would have to do that on their behalf. So we've provided a recommendation that we allocate some of the $631,260 to share with the library. If they have eligible expenses for reimbursement, we would support and assist them in making those submittals. Other than that, that is the end of my presentation. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
So Elizabeth, is there a bottom line in terms of the entire city budget?
No, not at this point. We've good. I mean, we're tracking to ensure that the non-COVID-19 impacted revenues and expenditures stay on pace. But are you looking for maybe the total citywide revenues compared to budget as of a certain?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
I can certainly make a note and incorporate that into the next update.
Because I think we were thinking it was about we were looking at about a $3.5 million shortfall, and I'd be interested in where we are vis-a-vis that. Obviously, we're doing much better than that. So, but
Right.
I didn't get a good sense of, is it, you know, 0 or is it 2 million or 1 million? So
Sure.
Director
other
Holleb?
questions?
Yeah, Director Holleb.
Yes.
In terms of the CARES Act and the request for the $631,000, do you feel that our submittals justify the full amount for reimbursement to the city, recognizing you'll have the library also included in that?
Right. So what we've recommended this evening related to the library is an allocation of about $62,000, which would be about 10% of the city's allocation. We use the same formula that Lake County used for the separate library districts to arrive at that number. And so the obvious question is, does that dip into funding that the city would otherwise be able to request reimbursement for?
Yeah.
That's a moving target. So the Treasury Department and the Office of Inspector General in Washington, D.C. continue to distribute and send out updated frequently asked questions. And so the biggest issue is related to payroll as it relates to those who were continued to be paid salaries and benefits, but the city couldn't be open to provide those services that it would typically provide. The most recent updated Treasury guidance did loosen the restrictions on getting reimbursed for payroll related expenditures that were directly resulted from COVID-19. That will certainly improve our ability to tap a large majority of the 600,000+ allocation. The other unknown is revenue replacement. That continues to be hotly debated in Washington, D.C. as to whether or not it's appropriate to use coronavirus relief funds to replace revenues foregone as a result of reduced sales or reduced income tax revenues. So those are the two specific aspects of this that we continue to monitor and track.
As I suspected, we should not quite bank the $631,000 quite yet.
Correct.
Okay.
But we did the submittal, that the initial submittal on July 31st was $362,000 to give you an idea of what at least has been submitted to Lake County for review.
Alderman Kashkarian?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Elizabeth, Could you give us some direction about what's happening with the motor fuel tax? If Springfield has given us any guidance, and explain what the impact will be for us in terms of our capital improvement fund.
So motor fuel tax is distributed into a separate special revenue fund. So we segregate motor fuel tax to appropriately report the expenses that are limited and restricted with motor fuel tax revenues. The good news on motor fuel tax is that the budget, the state fiscal year 21 budget, included additional dollars to local governments in motor fuel tax dollars. So we will well exceed our budget this year in motor fuel tax revenue as a result of that. It is slightly more restrictive on how those funds can be used. So it specifically does not allow resurfacing, street resurfacing. So we'll be working with Public Works in anticipation of the November Capital Workshop to help identify what specific projects we might want to fund from those additional dollars.
Thank you.
Alderman Rummel.
Elizabeth, so you've been looking at these numbers, and thank you for the charts tonight. But we really hadn't had a chance to study them. So when you're looking at this, and it's sort of along the lines that the mayor was asking, where do you see areas of possible concern or areas where we may be having a shortfall that we'll have to make up?
I think right now we're in very good shape. I think that income tax will fall off once that unemployment incentive is no longer there, but it will largely depend on how much employment has returned by that point. It's possible, as you know, there was a presidential declaration or executive order that provided for continuation of benefits, that the costs were shared between the state and the federal government. I haven't seen anything come out from Springfield as to whether Illinois will offer that, which would be not the full $600 per month, but it could be $300 to $400 is it week, I think. Previously it was $600 a week through July 31st. Now with some state and federal money combined, it could be $300 to $400 per month, but you know, we're more than a month past that date, and I haven't seen anything rolled out, at least that I've seen or read about. But I think sales tax is going to require some digging. I think that this is new information we received Friday at 3:30, and I don't think we've really been able to understand exactly why sales tax is so strong. But we know it's statewide, so it's not specific to Lake Forest. The other communities are seeing the same thing. So I guess I'm cautious on whether or not this trend will continue, but certainly as of today, we're in a much better position than we thought we would be.
Thank you. Yeah, when I looked at your slides briefly, I thought that the area of concern might be in income tax receipts compared to what we've budgeted for. So.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's an area we're really going to have to keep an eye on. I think we were a little optimistic perhaps when we budgeted for that, and it's a big number perhaps.
You know, I'll add to a broken record on this, but you know, we've been fortunate that income tax receipts have been restored by the state to their full 100% level from a few years ago, but we do have the graduated income tax ballot referendum looming here in the next few months, and the results of that, one way or the other, will likely have a significant impact on the state's finances. And so time will tell what it means for municipalities depending on the outcome of that referendum.
Right, but when was that supposed to get rolled out? Was it? It's not this fiscal year anymore, is it? Or is it January 1? When would it come into effect?
Yeah, if the referendum is passed, it would take effect January 1st, 21. And I would just note that on the income tax, the state did provide a bit of a hedge on their budget in that they're holding 5% that would typically be distributed to local governments pending the outcome of the referendum, with the general indication that if the referendum fails, they will withhold that 5% to help offset shortfalls in the state budget. But if the referendum is approved, then that additional 5% will be allocated to the local governments.
On a slightly related matter, or somewhat related matter, I don't know, I think many of you are already aware of this, and at the risk of speaking a little bit too soon, but I don't think it's very too soon, the state, with the able assistance of Lake County Board member Mike Rummel and our state representative Bob Morgan, appears to be on the verge of awarding a grant for the Burr Oak sewer project of roughly half the cost of the project. So the advantage to waiting there turns out to have been extraordinary. It's not a completely done deal, but it is. It looks like it, and so that's a significant. That'd be a roughly $2.5 million, infusion of capital funds that would free up other capital funds. So that's a huge. That's really a game changer for the Burr Oak project. And here I might be speaking a little bit more optimistically, because we haven't heard what the bids are yet. But apparently, with a lot of prodding by our state senator Julie Morrison, IDOT appears to have now found funding for the Deer Path and 41 reconstruction project. So they're waiting on bids, which come in on the 18th. The project has now been let out to bid. If the bids come in reasonably close to their original objective, which I think was in the $12 million range, is that Jason? Jason's nodding good. We would expect that project will kick off in the spring. And so we've gone from deep in the woods to some pretty good news on a couple of major infrastructure projects. Again, we've been working very closely with Bob Morgan, with Julie Morrison, and with Mike Rummel to optimize and maximize our chances of receiving funds for those projects. Again, this Deer Path 41 is an IDOT project, but we've been pushing them because they surprised us earlier this year when they told us that they did not have funding for that project after all the planning and work that had gone into it. What we're suspecting is that a lot of municipalities, to the extent that they were co-funding IDOT projects, have had to rebudget and are dropping projects, and that may have freed up some of these funds. So what started out as what we thought was going to be a $3.5 million shortfall, which led us to delay the Burr Oak project, in addition to some of the engineering questions that remained open with that project, now appears that we may actually get all of that back. So it'll be very interesting to see how all these different factors play out at the bottom line when the year is up. But I think it's going to be, we may actually even end up above our original revenue forecast for the year, if you count all this in. So.
Mr. Mayor,
Yeah.
Without risking sounding gratuitous, but I want to thank you, because I know you have done a tremendous amount of work with all of our representatives, and I think in no small part to your efforts working with those mentioned, and you're being very vigilant with this and pursuing all avenues. I know you're not one to take credit, but I think that a lot of this credit goes to you, and I want to thank you for your hard work and your perseverance, because I think it took every bit of that effort that you put out, and I'm thankful because I'm aware of essentially all that you've done. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, I also would not be fair if I didn't give Jason a fair amount of credit for bird dogging this. He's been right there at my side, sometimes pushing me. So, but yes, it does make a difference, and having good relationships, daily communication, with our state representatives and our county board representatives is a good thing, and it's something we need to continue to do and over the long run.
Mr. Mayor.
Now, I'll just note real quick too, George is correct that we're, probably on about the 2-yard line here with both of those projects. The good news, I do expect that we'll have some clarity by the time we're going into the November capital workshop. So for future capital planning purposes, I expect clarity and resolution on whether the funding is materialized or not.
Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to thank Elizabeth for her effective reporting. It's a lot of moving parts, and that was a great presentation. So thank you, Director.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions or comments for Elizabeth? Okay. All right. Well, that concludes my comments by the mayor. The next item on the agenda is comments by the city manager. So, Jason, please take it away.
Great. Thank you very much, Mayor and members of City Council. Good evening. Before I get into the 2 formal items that I had on the agenda tonight, I do have one public service announcement for those who may be tuning in from home. Just a reminder that there is still time to respond to the 2020 census. And so if you have not done so, please do respond. Having a complete count is very important to our community, and probably appropriate timing to bring this up as we were just talking about the state of the city's finances, because a lot of the state shared revenues that we receive are distributed on a per capita basis. So every single resident counted truly equals dollars that come back to the city and are reinvested in the community. And so the deadline for responding is September 30th, and there's plenty of information on the city website about how to do so. For those who have not yet responded, you may also note visitors coming to your house during the month of September. Census takers are out canvassing the community and making in-person visits to help achieve a complete count. So be on the lookout for that. And if you have any questions, either about the census or about any census takers you see in the neighborhood, feel free to contact Michelle Frederick in the city's Community Development Department. Next, the first item I have on the agenda is a continuation of the virtual community spotlight videos that I think began quite successfully last month, both with Gorton Community Center and Lake Forest Open Lands. They really set the bar quite high on the quality and caliber of video that they put forward. And while these don't entirely replicate our ability to have the face-to-face interaction at City Hall and the council chambers, really, I do think the videos have done a remarkable job of telling a compelling story about all of the contributions that these different entities make to our community. And so with that in mind, tonight I'm thrilled to have another video to share from Dickinson Hall over at the Grove Cultural Campus. And the video, I will say, both provides an incredible history of the property itself and of the city's senior services offerings. And I just want to say before we start the video, enormous amounts of credit that I'd like to give and an acknowledgement of Tricia Schwall, the manager at Dickinson Hall, and all of her staff for their creativeness in staying connected to our senior population, really at a time when those connections are more critical than ever. Again, we've had to rethink how we do that when in-person interactions are limited, but they really have done a remarkable job. And again, I think that is well highlighted in the video tonight. And finally, I'll just remind the council that as has occurred with these videos in the past, Tricia is joining us virtually, and she's happy to answer any questions that you may have upon completion of the video. Mike, feel free to start the video. Thank you.
I'm Tricia, Senior Resources Manager at Dickinson Hall. Our mission is to offer adults educational, social, and cultural opportunities, as well as services fostering independence, involvement, and continued personal growth in a welcoming and dynamic environment. How do we do this? We start with an energetic staff. We cultivate a dynamic mix of programs, classes, special interest groups, parties, and trips. Then we follow that up with social services like transportation, a lending closet, Medicare guidance, and a variety of other social services that help older adults maintain their independence and remain in their own homes. What we end up with is an amazing group of adults that we call our members. Chartered in 1970, the Senior Center started with just 50 members. Now, with over 1,000 members and 1,700 programs annually, we exist to enrich the lives of the residents of Lake Forest and Lake Bluff that are age 50 or better. 50 or better, you ask? At Dickinson Hall, we truly believe that you get better with age. Located on the beautiful grounds of the Grove Cultural Campus at 100 East Old Mill Road, Dickinson Hall was built in 1929 and was designed by architect Edwin H. Clark in the classic brick Georgian style. It served as a dining hall for Ridge Farm Preventorium. Ridge Farm developed this 28-acre site during the tuberculosis crisis in the early 1900s to provide a place for girls to live who were at risk of developing tuberculosis by offering them fresh air, proper nutrition, and exercise. Over the years, the campus was reinvented to serve emotionally disturbed children in the late 40s, and in the mid-60s, it became Grove School, a facility designed to serve individuals with severe disabilities. In 1997, the property was purchased by the City of Lake Forest, and in 2001, after an extensive multi-million-dollar renovation, the Senior Center moved from Gorton Community Center to historic Dickinson Hall. When we unexpectedly closed our doors in March, we made our #1 goal to stay connected to our members. We began the task of calling all of our members on a regular basis to check in and make sure they had what they needed, like the ability to get groceries and someone to talk to. While that may seem like a lot of phone calls, those small conversations or messages left truly brightened their days. Then we started the News Briefette, a digital weekly version of our bi-monthly publication, The News Brief. This offered our members opportunities to have virtual activities to do, similar to the ones we may have hosted on site. It also gave many the opportunity to take tours of places they may have never visited before. It opened their ears to new music and offered a variety of things that would make them smile, think, and keep busy. With Phase 4 being imminent, virtual programming and Zoom became part of Dickinson Hall's landscape. The entire staff made it our mission to connect our members to the world of webinars and virtual meetings. And for those who weren't able to join online, we kept our connection open with phone calls and conference calls. On the topic of those without technology, we have found grants to help get the right technology into seniors' hands. As you know, with anything new, there are growing pains. Not only did we have to get members to be more comfortable with this new idea of a virtual senior center, we also had to teach them how to use it. We created webinars and found websites to assist anyone who needed our help. Over the phone, outside on the patio, or in our library, one-on-one lessons have become part of our everyday. Our approach to reopening is well thought out, cautious, and very gradual. We have worked to create a safe environment that is comfortable for all of our vulnerable population. We are now focusing on virtual programming. which is making national participation possible for our new out-of-state members. And on the home front, we are now offering members the opportunity to view our lectures on-site at Dickinson Hall. We are hoping that this continues to foster the connection that makes Dickinson Hall what it is. When I think about Dickinson Hall, I can't help but feel, like many members do, that it is an extension of home. It is a place that welcomes you and provides an unrivaled outlet for your social, educational, and healthy lifestyle needs during your senior years. It is a place that I am proud exists for this community. I can't suggest enough that you, or seniors you know, become part of our community at Dickinson Hall. Though most of our programs are virtual these days, we are committed to remaining the #1 outlet for senior connections in Lake Forest and Lake Bluff. You can easily find out more information on our programs and activities by visiting our website, giving us a call, or scheduling a time to visit. Dickinson Hall has been here for nearly a century, providing shelter and a nurturing atmosphere during difficult times. This difficult time is no exception.
Great, thank you very much. And as previously noted, Tricia is here. If there are any questions or comments for her before we move on to the next topic on the agenda.
I have a quick question for Tricia. Tricia, can you share with us the demographic age range of your membership? You said about 1,000 residents, and I think you said 50 and up. And I was just curious to hear if you knew the breakdown.
I would say that a majority of our members are in their 70s, probably leaning towards the late 70s. We have a few members in their 50s and a few members in our 90s. The rest kind of range in that 60 to 80. We do find that most of our members do wait until they're retired to join, but we do have quite a bit that still join as a younger working person.
I just want to say that as the city's liaison to the Senior Resource Center, it's been an eye-opening and very gratifying experience to become more aware of everything that's offered through the Senior Center. I'm well within that demographic, and I really wasn't that aware of it before, but the array of programming and the depth of the programs that are offered is truly remarkable. And the staff is fabulous to work with. There's no reason that any senior in this community should fall through the cracks. And I was so heartened as a member of the Senior Center that I did get a call, just a wellness check, which was so gratifying. I like to think that I'm doing okay, but just to know that they were following up on all of their members that way, one-to-one, person-to-person, was just wonderful. And so I just want to congratulate the entire staff over at the Senior Center for what you're doing for our senior residents. It's just wonderful.
Thank you.
I'd like to echo Melody's comments. That was a very impressive video, and frankly, I didn't know the entire history of the facility myself, so that was very interesting. You made a comment about your out-of-state members, and I'd like to learn a little bit more about that, because one of the things we've all learned, I think, with the advent of the Zoom era is we can reach way beyond our borders with things that we used to think of just being very sort of local and parochial. And I'm interested in that aspect of things and what you're doing.
So we have two new members. One is from Georgia and the other one is from Michigan. The Michigan is a mother of one of our teachers our yoga instructor. And the second one is a daughter of a member who wanted to come to some of the classes that we're offering, that so she could come with her mom. So they opted to become members. They could have come as non-members, but they chose to become a member. And we also have another woman from knitting. She's in our knitting group who is not joining as a member as of yet, but she has joined our knitting group because she's friends with the woman who does the knitting. So we're finding that while it may be a small group of people, we do have that ability because we have some of our stuff online now.
Interesting. Well, we've been, my 93-year-old mother-in-law moved in with us last November, and we've been encouraging her to get involved. And had I known all of this was available virtually, we might have had an easier time getting her to, you know, get off it and go do something. So you may be hearing from us. So, hopefully.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much, Tricia, and for your staff and all you guys continue to do. The next item I had under my report is a presentation from Public Works Director Mike Thomas. As most people, I think, in the community are aware, given the volume of communications that were sent out over the weekend of August 15th, the city experienced a pretty unprecedented situation with, I think, 10 water main breaks over the course of 2 days. And so, you know, while the impact of the event was significant, you know, I'll say that without fairly decisive action from our public works staff, I think the consequences to the community could have been much worse. But certainly given the magnitude and uniqueness of this situation, I thought it would be appropriate for Mike Thomas to provide both the city council and the community with a summary of the events from that weekend. So Mike, happy to turn it over to you.
Great, thank you, Jason. Can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Wonderful, thank you. Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. As Jason noted this evening, we'd like to present to yourselves and residents of the community the issue we dealt with back on the weekend of August 15th and 16th. You are actually looking at the culprit. That is a water main, 12-inch water main. That is the break. It's about the size of a soccer ball and a half. And with that, we lost a whole lot of water and lost some pressure throughout town in two specific areas that I'll speak to here in a moment. Next slide. So our response began on Saturday morning, August 15th. I received a call from our Superintendent of Public Works, Dan Martin, noting that the guys at the water plant contacted him and said that the water tower was losing a lot of water in a short period of time. When we see that, we also realize and see that the pressure throughout town, the water main pressure, that begins to drop as well. Within about 5 minutes, our 1.5 million gallon water tower dropped about 81,000 gallons. And as I noted, the 5 areas throughout town where we measure our water main pressure, we saw those drop as well. As a result, to try and combat this, water plant increased the pumpage, and they also increased pumpage from the booster station, which is right across from West Campus, again, to try and combat all that water loss and the pressure loss. We called in guys from both water, sewer, and water plant to try and search the town. We have 168 miles of water main. When you have a water main break, if it's in the middle of the road or a parkway, it's pretty easy to find, or a resident or police or fire will call us. But something this large, it was imperative that we find it as quickly as possible. At about 2:30 in the afternoon, water plant staff discovered the main break actually southbound 41, just south of Gage Lane. It was under the drainage ditch. Just a huge amount of water was in the ditch flowing northbound. So the guys had found it. Next slide, please. with every main break we deal with, the number one thing we do is to try and isolate it. And by isolating it, we're really trying to cut off that water loss. And the way we do that is we turn valves on either side of the break. This obviously stops the loss of water, but also will stop the loss of water pressure, and we obviously can react accordingly at the water plant. The challenge we ran into is that after water and sewer staff tried closing multiple valves to reduce the flow on this 12-inch, they couldn't get the flow to stop. They therefore had to go back onto the 20-inch transmission main that is on the north side of the golf course, Deer Path Golf Course. It runs west on Laurel Ave, and they did their best to get that one shut down. In addition, water plant went ahead and increased their flow rates. So we have the booster station going. Water plant again jumped up their flow rate out of the plant. We closed that 20-inch main. When that happened, we knew doing that we were going to see main breaks. When you increase pressure that we did at the speed that we increased pressure, as well as closing that 20-inch valve, we knew we were going to have main breaks, but we made that decision to try and not lose the entire city with regards to water pressure. If we have water pressure drop below 20 PSI, IEPA requires that we have a boil order. On average, our water pressures in town are typically about 47 to 55. So again, we monitor that 24/7. The challenge with this is when we're increasing pumpage from the plant, when we have water coming out of booster station, and then we close this big transmission main, we created a hammer effect in water main systems, not only Lake Forest, but every water main system. None of them are designed to handle that immediate and significant change. As a result, as I noted, we had additional main breaks. We had 9 subsequent main breaks and 1 valve repair as well. Those are the locations of those breaks to your right. Next slide, please. So it was interesting. At about 5:30 in the afternoon on Saturday, I got a call saying that there was a big main break on Deer Path just west of Sweets, east of City Hall. And I went up there, and as I went up there, I got another call that we had one on Green Bay, and I got another call, we had one on McKinley. So in total, we had 10 main breaks. As our guys in water sewer were out trying to isolate and shut down this 12-inch, we needed help. And luckily, we've got great working relationships with the Village of Lake Bluff and the City Highland Park. Lake Bluff, we called them and asked them if they could provide us their Vector truck. We had ours out on 41. So they brought 2 personnel over to the McKinley main break. We had 1 guy from our water sewer section with them. Highland Park at 1:15 in the morning, we needed to open up our interconnects because we were still just losing pressure on that west side of town. We talked to our water plant engineer up in Madison at 1 in the morning, and he said all the pressures, everything that he sees, the interconnects opening with Highland Park would be the best bet. So Highland Park assisted with that. They also brought over 2 very large pumps to help us try and dewater this main break over on 41 because there was just a good amount of water beginning to flood that 41 area. We also called 4 contractors, DiTomaso, DeMayo, Demuth, and RJ Underground, and they assisted us with these main breaks as well. Next slide, please. So as we progress throughout the evening, and this is now probably 2, 3, 4 in the morning, John Gullidge and myself and Susan and Jason were talking, and what we were concerned about was that these 2 specific areas, we had received phone calls of low pressure. And again, as I noted, the rule says anything 20 PSI or below, we need to have a boil order. And we made a decision just simply as a precautionary move to go ahead and issue a precautionary boil order. We went ahead and I'll show you our communication plan here next. But we wanted to do that just to make sure if there was any issues with bacteria, and bacteria will grow in water if water is not moving. and if you do not have a high chlorine residual in your water main system. So we went ahead and issued the precautionary boil order, and then we lifted that Tuesday evening. The rule says we have to have 48 hours of tests with no bacteria in the water. We successfully did that for both locations. Next slide, please. Obviously, communication was a huge part of this, working with Susan Banks and Jason and Mike Strong. We went ahead and put together a notice for the residents at 6 a.m. We also worked with Carl Waldorf and the guys at the police department to use the Smart 911 notification system. So for those residents that have signed up for that, they received notice. I called our garbage guys in at 6:45 on Sunday morning, and I explained to them the issue. They then took the letters and the guidelines and hand delivered them, knocked on the doors to the affected homes. And at 8 a.m., Susan went ahead and issued the press release and the city e-news to approximately 9,000 residents, the Facebook pages, Chamber of Commerce, city's website, etc. Our whole goal in this, although, when we look at this area, it's about 150 households. Our whole goal in getting all of this out is we wanted to control the message. We wanted to make sure that the residents knew it was a very limited, small area. And if you were not living in that area, then you were not impacted by the boil order. That is why we took this aggressive approach. Monday afternoon at 2 o'clock, the garbage guys went back out and just brought updated letters to these two areas saying, we still have another 24 hours to go, but things look good. Thank you for your cooperation. And then right at 8 o'clock on Tuesday evening, when John Gullidge, our chief water plant operator, received the all clear message, we had letters ready. The garbage guys were in the neighborhood. They got the call, and they went and hand delivered notices again. Next slide, please. The important thing on something like this, and I know police department will do it, fire department, we do it, all the departments do it. When something big like this happens, it's important for us to take a step back and review everything and ask ourselves, what happened? Why did it happen? How can we improve? What did we learn from it? As we look back on this, the important thing for us at that moment, as Jason noted, was to stop the bleeding of that 12-inch. We could not get that 12-inch shut down. And if we didn't get it shut down and we didn't get that 20-inch valve closed, increased pumpage, we could have lost pressure throughout the entire city, and the entire city would have had a boil order. And again, doing what we did, we knew we were going to have main breaks. That was going to be part of it. Early communication was key. We did hear from some of the residents north of Wynwood on Waukegan and north of Gage. They appreciated seeing the garbage guy, somebody they knew, coming to their door and explaining to them what was going on. One of the things that has come out of this, and we're working on it right now, is we're actually deep into the planning for next 5 years for capital improvements. We've got now obviously a list of valves that we need to replace, and we're going to include that recommendation in our water fund for next year. So ultimately then, the reasons for success, the reasons that we were able to minimize the areas that had to have a boil order. First, timely assistance from Lake Bluff and Highland Park. We greatly appreciate their assistance, and we owe them a good debt of gratitude. Quick response from contractors. If you can imagine, as we're progressing through Saturday night into the early hours of Sunday morning, calling these contractors and asking for assistance. There were 2 of them that I spoke to a couple times where their employees were up in Wisconsin on vacation, and they called them back. And I really attribute that to just good working relationships that we've had with these underground contractors for decades now. In times like this, it really helps. Most importantly, as always, the exceptional teamwork and hard work by city staff. Just like anything big that the city does, it's always a team effort. Jason, Mike, Susan, for all their assistance with the communication. Police and fire were helping us. They were helping us a lot with closing off streets or responding to buildings for their fire suppression systems that had low pressures. Bernard Engineering was finding contractors for us, finding numbers, etc. We had our guys in streets, the guys in parks. We had one guy come in to close off all the irrigation that we were doing on the parks at 2:30 in the morning. Obviously, our water and sewer and our water plant guys that worked a day plus straight to get all this put back together. Most importantly, John Gullidge and Rich Volpe, our water, sewer, and water plant supervisors. They just did a bang-up job, and they were great dealing with the residents, and they had patience. But again, it was a team effort, and I'm just very, very proud of everybody. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. There's a lot of detail there. There's 2 more main breaks that we had that evening and the following morning. But hopefully we're done.
Director Thomas, this is Jed Morris. Given the scale of that break, do you anticipate a need to replace larger sections of that pipeline, given its age and maybe it's near its useful life?
Actually, no. And here's why. We'll have about a dozen main breaks a year. And again, with 168 miles of pipe, that our records show that pipe was installed on March 1st of 1966, cast iron. Cast iron pipes from the American Water Works Association, which we're a member of, their life expectancy is 120 years. Ductile iron pipe is 100 years. PVC plastic is 70 years. And we've now, over the past 5 years, gone to PVC. But no, that was one stretch of pipe that was bad. And sometimes when these pipes break, the soil around it, we refer to the soil, could be hot. The acidic nature of the soil could rot away at the iron. But no, we would not recommend replacing that stretch at this moment. I think really our focus next year, we have at least 30 valves that we know of that we've got to replace. So in the future, when main breaks occur, we can get good shutdowns and we can stop that water loss immediately.
Great, thanks very much.
Mike, as chairman of the Public Works Committee, you and I did talk that weekend in which you were totally immersed in this crisis, this emergency, and I gained a good appreciation of the effort that the team was putting in. Obviously, I don't know how much sleep, if any, you did get for that 2 days. But also the rest of the folks trying to deal with the challenges, working together with others, as you have mentioned, and all those should be acknowledged and thanked heartfeltly. But it was something that showed your abilities to respond appropriately, to do the communication, to get the workers. And I was really amazed at the amount of effort you were able to pull from your folks, from the city staff to deal with the problem. So I do commend you and your people for that. And I also appreciate the post-incident analysis. We should always look at that sort of question when we have this thing occur. And I know when we had talked earlier, there are questions of the valves, why some of them didn't work. And I do appreciate the fact that you haven't lost sight of the fact that these things should be looked at as a learning curve, and we do what's necessary to make hopefully life easier and things even work better in the future. But again, the important message I want to say, having talked to you at the early stages, I truly understand and appreciate the effort that you've put in, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairman Bushman. Thank you for your comments.
Yeah, Director Thomas, this is Alderman Preschlack. I also talked with you and appreciate that, echo the comments of thanks. Even if we haven't done already, if it is an opportunity to, to write a note of thanks to Lake Bluff and to Highland Park for, just for their response. And then obviously the contractors as well. I was in the impacted area in terms of the boil order, and so as a citizen, the communication was very professional. Like, we got something at the door at 7 a.m. It was very clear, easy to read. And then I think the next day or so, when it was the all clear sign on the testing on Monday, and we got something as well. So, things do happen. And I think, it's people, process, organization, communication, and relationships with the, surrounding communities and contractors. And then there's leadership of our staff. So I think we're really proud of you guys, and I really appreciate it. I do think we do have to think about creative ways to get even more efficient on the response side. There could be pressure sensors or other kind of ways to pinpoint this a little bit more intelligently. So, I think in future public works meetings, we could put our heads together and strategize on some things and see what the, the cost would be. And, it's all kind of cost benefit, kind of risk analysis, but it's a massive amount of infrastructure. And there's kind of three main systems in the ground to serve our community in terms of the sewer, water, and sanitary. And these are assets and systems that we have to manage and invest in and maintain. And that's one of our, primary duties on top of, kind of public safety and other things. So, I think, it's something that probably is going to happen again. So, to Director Thomas's point, and we'll do everything we can to, to try to brainstorm and to continue to kind of reduce the probability of it happening or increase the response time. But I really, really appreciate the effort as a citizen in the impacted area. And then the collaboration was great. So, if there's a handwritten note signed from all of us to those communities and the contractors for a job well done, I'd be in favor of that.
Thank you, Alderman Preschlack. I know Jason talked to Lake Bluff and Highland Park. I called them as well. I also called the contractors the following day or two, just to simply say thank you. They really weren't expecting it, but we really appreciated the fact that they picked up the phone and said, "What do you need? We'll be there." And that was very, very appreciative. Number two, as far as the pressure sensors, I agree with you completely. We are beginning an investigation now to look at a certain point in time, replacing the water meters, which are coming up on now 15, 17 years old. And the systems that they have now also include pressure sensors. And if we could, in the future, be able to put out and have in our system more pressure sensors, it would be extremely beneficial. We could pinpoint the location of the breaks much better than just having 5 pressure sensors around town. And the sooner we can isolate these things, the far better off the system is. So we are looking at that. Thank you.
If I can raise one other point that, we have later on the agenda, a request to approve expenditure of funds that were incurred in connection with the water main. And I know Mike and I talked about it, and recognizing the difficult circumstances that we were asking for this help, and maybe we were not in the best of bargaining positions. I did ask Mike, and Mike, if you could confirm that the pricing that is being billed to us, that's at the later agenda item, is very fair and reasonable.
That is correct, Chairman Bushman. It is. As I told you today, I was actually pleasantly surprised with the invoice amounts.
Thank you.
Received. I was very surprised. I quite frankly thought this total was going to be double than what we're talking about this evening. Yes, the pricing was absolutely fair, what we've seen in the past.
Thank you.
I had a question, Director Thomas. I find it fascinating, and fortunately I had the pleasure of serving on the Public Works Committee. But could you talk about the role of the interconnects that we have with Highland Park and what role that played? I understand it's rather unusual that we go to using that system.
Sure. So we actually have interconnects with the Village of Lake Bluff, the City of Highland Park, and the Village of Bannockburn. With that, we have agreements with each of the 3 municipalities that we will be bringing to you in the future. The agreements stipulate that the village manager, city managers need to approve, and I think we're going to need to approve opening the interconnects, and I think we're going to add the or designee onto that. Jason, I don't think liked the fact that I woke him up at 12:30 on the Sunday morning to ask for approval, and he needed to contact the Highland Park city manager to get approval to open the interconnects. But the interconnects are there for exactly the reason that we had them. When we're losing pressure, when we're losing volume, we either can get it from Highland Park or Lake Bluff or Bannockburn. And it really depends upon the issue that we're dealing with. If it's irrigation and we just couldn't keep up, and we had that about 10 years ago, we would tend to go to Lake Bluff. And a lot of it has to do with the physics and the elevation of their water tower, where it's located in relation to our water tower, and the pressures that they're running. And then the same thing goes with Highland Park, depending upon what we're trying to do. On this one, Highland Park was closer to the booster station and to the water tower, and we needed to get water. The interconnects that we had with Highland Park were closer to those locations, and we needed to get water to those two areas as quickly as possible. That's why we woke up our engineer, our water plant engineer up in Madison, and reviewed the data with him, and he said, Highland Park's your better choice, go with HP. So their emergency interconnects, we turn around and will help Highland Park and Lake Bluff as well, not only on emergencies, but if there's routine maintenance. You know, for example, if Lake Bluff needs to do work on their water tower and they need to maintain their pressure via our system, we will go ahead and open up those interconnects and maintain pressure throughout their system. So they have multiple values with each of them. They're important to maintain, and we're happy we have the arrangements with each community.
So where are these interconnects? I'm picturing like one big valve, or is there?
They're all underground. They're all underground. Lake Bluff, we've got one at Moffett and Sheridan, McKinley and Sheridan, Green Bay, Lake Bluff, Lake Forest border. We had one at 41, but we took that one out. We've got one on Waukegan Road. Those are Lake Bluffs. Bannockburns is over on Telegraph. Highland Park, we have one near the Senior Center and two on Old Elm, one at Green Bay and one at Beverly. So those are the locations, and they're metered. So our procedures, our protocol call for an employee of Lake Forest and an employee, in this example, Highland Park, to be present to certify what the current meter read is before we open them. And then when we close them, we've got two guys there to certify. So we now have two guys seeing exactly how much water is taken, and we can document that in our annual IDNR reports.
Do we pay them for the water? I'm not sure.
We do not. We do not. We haven't for decades. We help one another out, and each town then notes that on our annual IDNR reports that are submitted in October, so they know where each town's water has gone.
Thank you.
I'll just note real quick too, to just further emphasize Public Works Director Thomas's point, that I do think a conversation that has stemmed from this, a good lesson learned, is perhaps revisiting those intergovernmental agreements that specifically require any authorization of the city managers. To Alderman Preschlack's point, not only did I express my gratitude for Highland Park for their assistance, but also to their city manager for answering the phone at almost 1 a.m. And I say it now, we can laugh about it, but at the time, had the phone not been picked up, we would have had a real problem. I think from a city manager perspective, if the roles are reversed and I'm getting that call, all I'm doing is calling the public works director or the water treatment plant operator and saying, can we do this? And so, probably good for us to work in some additional fail-safe mechanisms so that if something like this were to happen yet again at 1 a.m, we're not relying on someone like me to make sure the phone's being answered. So again, a good lesson learned, and something I do anticipate we'll probably bring back to the council later this fall.
detailed report. Very informational.
I'd just like to say a great job of damage control, communication damage control, responding to what could have been a much bigger crisis in a way that minimized the inconvenience and the potential for things getting out of hand really on a communication basis as well. I mean, oftentimes perception is reality, and if you lose control of the message, you lose control of the whole situation. So great job, Mike, and your
Thank
whole
you.
team.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mike. And real quick before I conclude my report, just a reminder to the council and to the public at large that our next scheduled meeting for September 21st is in fact a workshop. So there will be no specific action items on that agenda, but it will be a capital-centric workshop, and we hope to have information on agenda items out to the council shortly. And that concludes my report for this evening.
Jason, do you want to make any comments about the upcoming ward meetings?
Sure. Yes, I'd be happy to. I must admit you caught me slightly off guard. Let me make sure I have the dates in front of me here. But fortunately, I can do that pretty quickly. But yes, hopefully everyone watching tonight received the postcard that was sent out in the mail. I know I received mine, I think, late last week, but I think this is going to be a great opportunity to connect with the residents in the community in a virtual setting. Unfortunately, we can't do it in person, given the potential interest and the size of the crowds that could be drawn, but we will be holding our ward meetings virtually. As a reminder to those who are watching, Tuesday, September 29th, we will kick things off with Ward 2, followed by Ward 4 on Thursday, October the 8th. Tuesday, October 27th, we will have our Ward 1 meeting, and Thursday, October 29th, we will have Ward 3. So more information to come, both through our website and likely on social media with Zoom links and any other additional information. But I appreciate you reminding me to bring that up.
Thank you. Should be it'll be interesting to see. Sometimes with the advent of Zoom, we get a much greater level of participation in these kinds of events than we will, have in the past. So I hope that's the case here. Next item on the agenda is opportunity for citizens to address the city council. Members of the public can provide public comment by calling 847-810-3643. That's 847-810-3643. So we'll give a minute for people who'd like to comment on anything to call in. Just as a reminder for anybody listening, this information is always shared as part of the agenda and is also posted at City Hall and I believe on the city's website. So,
we have Joyce Rita filling in today. So Joyce, are there any calls at this time?
There are no callers this evening.
Thank you very much. Now, next item is committee reports, but there are none of those this evening. So the next item on the agenda is items for omnibus vote consideration. There are 12 tonight, so bear with me. This may take a minute. First is approval of the extension of the mayor's declaration of a local state of emergency until the next city council meeting. Second is approval of the August 3rd, 2020 City Council meeting minutes. Third is approval of the check register for the period of July 25th through August 28th, 2020. Fourth is approval of a resolution of appreciation for retiring employee Stephen E. Grost. Fifth is approval of a resolution of appreciation for retiring employee Paul J. Puglisi. Sixth is approval of former city manager's request for reimbursement of costs incurred in defending against the charges brought by the Lake County State's Attorney that were ultimately dismissed in the amount of $14,519.50. Seventh is the ratification of expenses related to the 11 emergency water main break and valve repairs that occurred August 15th to 21st, 2020, in the total amount of $84,800. Eighth is approval of an intergovernmental agreement between the City of Lake Forest and the Lake Forest Library related to Lake County COVID-19 relief funds. Ninth is consideration of an ordinance amending the City of Lake Forest Liquor Code to increase the number of licenses available in Class A2 and G1 and amend the language relating to the Class G2 to modify current hours of operation for institutions of higher learning. First reading and, if appropriate, final approval. 10th is requesting council approval to contract with Chicago Communications to replace aging cables and antennas on the radio tower and the Lake Forest Public Safety Building. 11th is consideration of ordinances approving recommendations from the Building Review Board. And I should note here that the approved petition for 1131 Turicum Road is being postponed due to some technical survey issues that need to be sorted out. But this will be first reading and, if desired by the City Council, final approval, again, with the exception of that 1131 Turicum Road item. And 12th is consideration of a recommendation from the Plan Commission in support of a special use permit to authorize a new real estate office, Compass Real Estate, at 284 East Deer Path, if desired by the council, waive first reading and grant final approval of the ordinance. Is there any item that any member of the council would like removed or taken separately?
Mr. Mayor, I don't ask for removal of any item, but I do have a comment on one of the items, if I may.
Okay.
I'm referring to item 6, and again, I'm not asking it to be pulled from the omnibus agenda, since the action that's being requested of the council tonight is in compliance with our city code. Because other issues were raised in the covering memorandum from the city attorney, I do believe some clarification may be warranted. I think we do need to recognize that the sole issue before us tonight is the indemnification that was requested based on our city code. And since the city code does require indemnification under the current circumstances, I feel it's important for us to recognize that our action tonight should be simply based on the city code. There's a separate question, is whether any changes to our indemnity provisions are warranted, but I understand that is not before the council tonight. Do recognize some of us have raised that question, so I am hoping that it can be further considered at appropriate time in the future. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Other comments? Yes.
Point of order, point of information. I want everybody to be aware of the fact that, in my opinion, I admire the transparency that the city manager and you have taken in terms of presenting this to the public, so we're all made aware of it. But this does not need to be voted on. This is something that falls well within the city manager's purchasing authority, number one. And number two, voting on whether or not we need to allocate those funds, in my opinion, is completely out of order because we have a contractual obligation. And, to Alderman Bushman's point, these are questions that should be brought up outside of the omnibus And whereas I acknowledge he and another alderman have an interest in somehow modifying employment agreements, I find it out of order. And I just don't think that this should even be in the omnibus, but I want to applaud you for your transparency and your willingness to show the public the final and end chapter in this, and I hope we can put it to bed.
Thank you. There is one aspect of this, and I maybe would turn to City Attorney Tappendorf. The City of Lake Forest's indemnification provisions are somewhat more, I guess, restrictive is the best way to put it, in that it does actually require a review, I believe that's the language, by the City Council. So Julie, could you speak to that just to Alderman Goshgarian's point?
Yep, there is language in the city code that to the extent that the request for reimbursement is not covered by insurance. So a lot of these claims will go through the city's insurer, through IRMA, because they'll be covered claims, civil lawsuits, our police officers who may be named in a lawsuit that the city indemnifies them. Those cases are generally covered and defended by the insurance. So you won't see those requests, but the code does require, to the extent that it is a claim that's not covered by insurance, that it come to the City Council. So that's why we've brought it to the City Council.
Although we really don't have a choice here. I mean, this is pursuant to a contractual obligation, and the conditions have been clearly met. So
correct.
So to that degree, I think we are in total agreement.
Yeah.
At this point, I would entertain a motion to approve the omnibus agenda.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I have another issue, not with that item, but
Sorry.
with the item pertaining to allowing the special use permit on the real estate office on Western Avenue. While I have no problem with that particular request, I well remember when the city put in that ordinance and the reasons therefore, and there was concern that between real estate and banks, they were occupying most of the first floor retail area in the city. And that came in at a time when retailers were having difficulty, just as they are now. These things go in cycles, and hopefully will rebound from this cycle as well. So I would just be interested to to sort of put down some guidelines as to when we consider or what the considerations should be to grant a special use permit in these circumstances. You know, maybe some just general guidelines of what we should be looking for when we grant these exceptions.
Sure, and I can jump in. That's a fair point. I would ask Community Development Director Kathy Zerniak to provide some input on that. I believe we can pull her up on the screen here.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead, Kathy.
Yes. Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. The Plan Commission is required to hold a public hearing on requests specifically for banks and real estate offices based on a code amendment that occurred a number of years ago. There are specific requirements, criteria in the code that are reviewed by the Plan Commission. I know Alderman Bushman has asked that as part of our review of the B1 zoning district, which is currently underway, that we look at those criteria. But there are existing criteria. I believe you have the staff report from the Plan Commission that speak to some of those criteria. But we will certainly be reviewing those and determining whether there should be specific criteria when we look at particular uses. There are currently specific criteria, for instance, when we look at drive-throughs. So that may be something that we want to do for real estate offices and banks. But Alderman Rummel, as you mentioned, when that code amendment was put in place to classify banks and real estate offices as special uses, we were seeing many new real estate offices and banks joining the community, coming into the community. In this case, since that was put in place, we have lost a real estate office. Baird & Warner is no longer in the central business district, so our overall number right now is not increasing. But we certainly will review those criteria and bring that before the Plan Commission for discussion, and then it will ultimately come before the City Council.
Great, thank you very much for that. Yes, I did note that we were sort of an even trade, that one was moving out of the central business district. But yeah, you're right. We just need to always have consistent criteria that we're applying to these cases, because it is important that our central business district remain primarily retail. Thank you.
Yeah, and just to echo that, as Ms. Cerniak referred to, that issue did come up in a couple of developments here in the 4th Ward. And, you know, there has been some discussion, and as mentioned, you know, the issue of special use permit, how to define it, how to control it, how to implement it, you know, hopefully will be looked at and maybe improved as we go forward. Thank you.
Other comments? Okay, I would again entertain a motion to approve
So moved.
omnibus items. Do I have a second?
Seconded.
Okay. We have a roll call vote, please.
Alderman Morris. Alderman Karas.
Yes.
Alderman Rummel.
Aye.
Alderman Preschlack.
Aye.
Alderman Gashgarian.
Aye.
Alderman Bushman.
Aye.
Alderman Weber.
Aye.
7 yea, 0 nay, motion carries.
Thank you. Next item is, well, skipping over a few things that we don't have, additional items for discussion, comments by council members. Any additional comments by council members on anything that hasn't already been addressed tonight? Okay, in that case, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the meeting is adjourned. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Enjoy the nice fall weather.